Taxonomy helps us categorize life into a hierarchy based on shared traits. So there are 8 levels in the taxonomy of organisms. So we start with the broadest, which is domain, followed by kingdom, then phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Usually in the exam, they will ask you to arrange this from the broadest category to the most specific one, which is the species. So it's important to know ano yung pagkakasunod-sunod nila. So how do we remember that? We remember dear King Philip came over for good soup. So D for domain, for dear, K for kingdom, P for phylum, C for class, O for order, F for family, G for genus, and S for species. Some people get confused over taxonomy and phylogeny. Remember, taxonomy is just a way of organizing organisms into hierarchies based on shared traits. Meanwhile, phylogeny is the study of evolutionary relationships among organisms. Phylogeny can be demonstrated using a phylogenetic tree. So, phylogenetic trees, para lang siyang family trees na ginagawa natin nung elementary. So, my mom, my dad, my children. It's basically how it works as well. So, it has different parts. Nodes is where the branching occurs, the point of branching, and it represents common ancestors. The branches represents the evolutionary pathways, and the clades are basically the groups with shared ancestors. So, the node and all its branches represent a clade. Now let's take a look at this diagram to better illustrate the concept of phylogenetic trees. So this point here, itong number 1, this is called a node. This is the branch point and it represents common ancestry. The branches represent evolutionary divergence, meaning may trait na nag-iba sa kanila. That's why they had to diverge in their evolution. So for example, those that go into this branch have tetrapod limbs, while those that go towards this branch, such as the lungfishes, don't have tetrapod limbs. Now let's take a look at major plant classifications. This also follow the concept of phylogeny. So the earliest plants, for example, they diverged into 2 types, non-vascular and vascular. Those vascular plants had to evolve into 2 different types, those with seeds, here, and those without seeds or seedless. The seeded ones had to diverge into non-flowering and flowering plants. And finally, flowering plants diverged into either monocots or dicots. So let's take a closer look at each of these groups. So let's differentiate vascular and non-vascular plants. Vascular plants are better suited for larger plants and those with drier environments because they have transport tissues called the xylem and the phloem, so they can transport water and nutrients all throughout their system. Examples of vascular plants are ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. Meanwhile, non-vascular plants are usually smaller plants and they thrive on moist environments because they don't have transport tissues. Examples are mosses and liverworts. As we mentioned, vascular plants can either be seeded plants or seedless plants. Seeds actually provide a survival advantage because they provide protection for the embryo, thus allowing them to grow in a variety of conditions. Examples are gymnosperms and angiosperms. Meanwhile, seedless plants reproduce via spores and they depend on water for their reproduction, thus limiting their habitats. Examples of seedless plants are ferns. Flowering plants or angiosperms produce flowers and fruits. Flowers attract pollinators, meanwhile, fruits aid in seed dispersal. Thus, flowering plants actually have increased reproductive success. Meanwhile, non-flowering plants or gymnosperms produce cones and have lower reproductive success. Monocots are adapted for fast-growing plants such as, for example, grasses. Meanwhile, dicots are usually found in larger, more complex structures such as trees. So we can distinguish monocot versus dicots based on several characteristics like, for example, yung vein pattern nila and also their roots. So monocots, from the word mono, only has 1 cotyledon. They have parallel veins and they have fibrous roots. What are examples of this? Examples are grasses and corn. Dicots, on the other hand, from the word di, means 2 cotyledons. They have branching veins and have taproots. Examples are different types of trees, such as oak trees. The animal phyla represents a diverse range of habitats and structures. Pay attention to their defining features, such as their symmetry or their segmentation. For example, Porifera has porous bodies. They're asymmetric and sessile. Cnidaria have stinging cells, radial symmetry, and are usually motile. Platyhelminths have bilateral symmetry. They rely on diffusion for food and oxygen. Mollusca are soft-bodied with shells. Annelida are segmented worms. They have complete digestive systems. Nematoda. These naman are unsegmented roundworms. In contrast, Arthropoda are segmented bodies with exoskeleton. Echinodermata naman are sessile or slow-moving, and they have spiny exoskeletons. And last but not the least, Chordata. Chordata has notochord at some point in their development.